In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to recruit Uber and Lyft drivers into your Hivemapper fleet, because ultimately they have the ability to match the perfect driver profile for this project. Now, I currently have over 50 drivers in my fleet, and I would say about 80% of those can be routed back to the process that I'm going to be covering. So if you are actively building out or have plans to build out a fleet with Hivemapper, this video is going to be incredibly helpful in those efforts. All right, here are the topics I'm going to be covering. First and foremost, you need to identify what driver profile you're looking for. Secondly, I'll cover how you can quickly and efficiently qualify that driver for the parameters of that driver profile that you've identified. Third, once you qualify the driver, I'll walk you through how I pitch my drivers and get them excited about joining my fleet. And lastly, I'll give you some tips on some of the things that I've picked up over the last couple of years that I absolutely recommend you include in your process. Now, you may be in a situation where you're going to be waiting for a bit for your shipment because these things are very backordered right now. But I was in the same boat. I put my orders in the first day that pre-orders opened back in April of 2022. And I did not get my first shipment until 8 months later that following December. So I will share some of the things that I learned through that process that will allow you to lay some groundwork now so you can hit the ground running when you get your first shipment. And really my goal here is to shorten your learning curve and help you to avoid some of the mistakes I made in getting to this point. All right, let's talk about the ultimate driver profile. Now, for me, I'm looking for daytime drivers. And secondly, drivers that are on the road at minimum 4 days a week, preferably 5+ days a week. Now, this may be different for you depending on where you are in this process, because the beginning is really the hardest part. And once you get a few drivers in your fleet, especially if you have a good referral program, and I'll cover that later, it is a snowball effect. So at the very beginning, you might loosen some of those requirements up. In fact, I did at the very beginning, just to get the ball rolling. Now, before I get into the qualification process where you'll actually be interacting with the driver, I want to talk about what's called the 80-20 rule of active listening. And the whole concept here is that you should be speaking 20% of the time, you should be actively listening 80% of the time. And it makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, A, people like to be heard, and B, people generally like to talk about themselves. So if you have the ability to ask thought-provoking questions and then actively listen to the response and then ask more questions that build upon their response, well, people will generally like you. And people want to work with people they like. But I would say this doesn't just apply to sales. Think about your interactions with colleagues, friends, family, relationships. You really should be self-aware about what percentage of the time you're talking versus listening in all of the conversations in your life. But for the sake of this video, I am going to give you some really good open-ended questions that you can use to build rapport with the driver to get them talking. And I'm going to call out a couple of areas where it's absolutely critical that you stop and pause to stop talking and give them a chance to respond. All right, now I'm going to talk about how you can qualify your driver to see if they meet those parameters in that driver profile that you're looking for. Now, keep in mind, you might only have 5 to 10 minutes to both qualify and pitch your driver, so you need to be very efficient in your process. The two things that you're trying to solve for are whether they're a daytime driver and how many days a week they're on the road. And I'm going to give you 2 critical questions that you can use to identify that very quickly. But first, when you get in the car, build a little rapport. And it could be something as easy as asking, how is your day or your night going? And get them talking a little bit. And then I lead into critical question number 1, which is, so you're just getting started for the day or are you finishing up? That's going to give you insight into whether they're a day or a nighttime driver. For example, let's say it's 8 a.m. and you ask them, so you're just getting started for the day or are you finishing up? And a common response is, I started a couple hours ago, but I'm going to be going until probably about 2 or 3. And then I'll ask one more question to fully qualify that first parameter. And in this case, I'd say, oh, nice. Do you always drive days? Okay. And at that point, you will know whether they're a day or a nighttime driver. And one thing I have learned over the last couple of years is that generally speaking, Uber and Lyft drivers are either day or nighttime drivers. Now, of course, you're going to have your outliers and your drivers that are out there for 16 hours a day. But the most common thing I hear is that daytime drivers don't like dealing with intoxicated people at night, and nighttime drivers don't like dealing with traffic during the day. And obviously, there's other scenarios where maybe they have kids at home that dictate their schedule. But regardless, generally speaking, they're either going to be day or nighttime drivers. So at that point, you've qualified for the first parameter. Now, depending on how long the ride is, I'll generally build a little bit more rapport, get them talking a little bit more. And some good questions to ask are, what are your thoughts on Uber versus Lyft? And most drivers have pretty strong feelings about one versus the other. Some do both. What do you think about Amazon Flex? And you can ask the same question about DoorDash or Uber Eats. And I'm starting to see more and more drivers start to go to Amazon Flex because depending on their location, they can actually make more money delivering packages for Amazon. I've spoken with some other drivers that said that Uber's gotten kind of greedy recently. What's your experience with that? Uber has actually doubled their fares over the last 4 years, and the drivers are making the same amount of money. So this is a topic that can definitely get them talking. And another really good one, you can just ask, how do you like driving or living in Chicago or whatever area you're in? Now notice that all these questions are structured in a way that you can't just answer yes or no. And this is what we call open-ended questions because it forces them to talk. You'll also learn more and more about all these topics the more rides that you're on, so you'll be more informed for those conversations moving forward. And then I'll move into qualifying for that second parameter, which is, again, how many days a week they're on the road. And I'll normally use a transition statement like, I have to say I am pretty envious that you have the flexibility to choose your own schedule. Do you drive full-timers is something you do on the side? And you'll get a range of answers. Sometimes they'll say, oh, I just do it for a couple hours after work every day, or I just drive on the weekends. And then you'll get that driver that says, no, I'm out here every single day. And that is exactly what you're looking for. And you completed your qualification process. And realistically, you can knock that out in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes if you're on a short Uber ride. If you qualified them to be that perfect driver profile, I generally transition right into the next stage. Have you ever heard of Hivemapper? Now, to this point, every single driver has said no. Now, that could change over the coming months with the success this project is having, but regardless, that's going to allow you to transition into your elevator pitch. Now, your elevator pitch is basically your way of explaining the project, but keep it simple, don't make it rocket science, and keep it succinct. And this is my elevator pitch. So it's this project, it's been around about a year now, but you put this dash cam in your windshield to collect street level imagery and you're rewarded for it. And then quiet, okay? Let them respond. And normally they'll respond with something like, really? Or I just had to put a dash cam in my windshield? And then I'll move into the second part of my elevator pitch. Yeah, the whole goal is to build the freshest map that exists. And if you think about like Google Maps, for example, a lot of their imagery is super outdated. And having fresh mapping data is incredibly valuable. And the thought is, there's millions of people on the road already, so why not incentivize them to collect data doing what they're already doing every day? And this is where you can start to weave in some of the successes of the project. So 2 things I would have ready. Number 1, have a picture on your phone of the dash cam in your windshield and its placement, okay? Because you're going to want to be able to show them what the dash cam looks like. The second thing I'd recommend is having the Explorer pulled up on your phone. Now, don't go sticking your phone in their face while they're driving, okay? They're not going to appreciate that and it's not safe. But wait till you get to like a stoplight or something. Yeah, this is what the dash cam looks like. Or you could say, yeah, there's over 200 drivers in Chicago doing this right now. Or show them all the roads that have been mapped. Or talk about the fact that, we mapped 11% of the world's roads in the first year. Like, all these are really good metrics to bring up because it legitimizes the project. Because ultimately, when something sounds too good to be true, people are really skeptical. The more metrics you can show and the more real you can make it, the better it's going to be received. All right, now you're going to get a lot of different types of questions, but there are 2 questions that you're going to get pretty much every time in some variation that I want to address. Number 1 is, what do the rewards look like? The way I recommend handling that is under-promising and over-delivering. That's because if you set expectations here and you come in here, you're a freaking hero. So generally what I'll say is like, well, about 50 Uber and Lyft drivers across the country that I'm currently working with. So it definitely depends on how much you drive and where you're driving. But last week, the rewards range from here to here. And I'll generally knock 10 to 15% off of those numbers. Again, because I would rather be conservative. So set realistic expectations. Number 2 is, how much does it cost to participate? Now, I generally use this question to segue into my close. And I'll say something like, well, I actually started a business around this project where I buy the dash cams and I place them with Uber drivers and split the rewards with them. That's actually why I was asking some of those questions. So right now I'm being super picky about who I place them with because I only have a few left and I've ordered more, but they're super back ordered right now. Like, nobody can get their hands on these things. Let's say you don't have dash cams on hand. You'll change that talk track slightly. I ordered these things a couple months ago, but I expect to get my first shipment here in the next few weeks. But basically, I'm looking for drivers that drive during the day and are on the road a lot. And well, based on our conversation, it sounds like you're exactly what I'm looking for. And then pause. This is the most critical pause in this entire conversation. Now, there's really 2 ways that this can go. The first way is that the driver starts telling you, well, I'm on the road all the time. And you can tell they're excited about it, but they start selling you on why they should be in your fleet. Well, at the end of the ride, I'll give you my card and we can swap information. Obviously, I'll answer any more questions you have. But I will be around tomorrow afternoon and Friday morning. So I don't know what your schedule looks like, but if you're able to meet up, we can go ahead and get you set up. And I'll try to nail down a time with them while you're in the car. Now, the other way this could go is you have your skeptical driver, okay? And they've been acting kind of disinterested the whole time. Now, this pause is more important than ever for that type of driver. And in fact, I have a story about this. My sister is visiting me like December of 2022, and we were getting into Uber. She goes, I want to see you pitch your Uber driver. Okay, so I get to that point and I pause. Now, after we got out of the ride, my sister said, that was like a really super awkward long pause. But, he was trying to make it seem like he wasn't interested the whole time. But after that pause, you could tell he was super interested because he started asking more questions about it. Like, exactly. So really at that point, if they continue to ask questions, then I'll keep engaging that conversation. But you've just given them a lot to think about. So if it seems like they're losing some engagement, yeah, I'll give you my business card and we get to said destination, and happy to answer any questions you have. I'll be around the rest of the week. So if you want to sync up, I can definitely get you set up, and that's it. Okay. So I think it's really important not to oversell this, not to be pushy. Again, if it sounds too good to be true, people get really skeptical. And frankly, you're presenting a really unique, cool opportunity to these people. So you shouldn't have to oversell it. Now, lastly, I want to give you some tips on some things that I learned the hard way through trial and error that I highly recommend you incorporate into your process. Number one is virtual versus physical business cards. Okay. I have a lot of friends that were giving me crap about giving physical business cards to these drivers, and I've gone back and forth. But for this purpose specifically, I've had far more success with physical business cards. And here's the reason why I think that is. You have to remember, you might be one of 20 passengers in their car that day. So they're having a ton of conversations. Not to mention, people have lives. You know, they get off work and they have families at home and they're tired. And as much as we'd hope for them to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I finally am off work and I call that guy from 8 hours ago with the dash cam. Like, that's just not realistic. So I think the physical business card serves as a reminder. You know, they get off work and maybe it's in their cup holder or wherever they put it in. They're like, oh yeah, I need to reach out to that guy. In fact, I've had situations where like 2 weeks later, probably sitting at home one day and saw the card there and decided to reach out to me. So I highly recommend going with physical business cards. The next thing should probably go without being said, but do your research on the project. You should be a master of your craft. And when they're asking questions, you should know what you're talking about. But also, you should be excited, okay? Because if you get into their car and you're like, hey man, you should definitely check out this Hivemapper thing, like put a dash cam in your windshield and give you rewards. They're gonna look at you in the rear view mirror and be like, yeah, sure, bro. I'm gonna put your dash cam in my windshield and get your rewards. Okay. By the way, do we need to go to a hospital? Like, do you even have a pulse back there weekend at Bernie's? Like, what's going on back there? You know what I mean? Like, you need to be excited. And the more research you do about this project, the more excited you'll get. And if you're excited about it, people will want to work with you. And there's a lot to be excited about. We are in the very early stages of this project, and it's super innovative, and there's already generating revenue. And the DePIN space in general is going to absolutely explode this year. So we are in the right place at the right time. And the next thing I'll say is don't get discouraged, because there are more drivers that I've pitched that I've never heard from again than the ones that have actually joined my fleet. Now you might think, oh, it's such a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't everybody do this? Well, yeah, but you have to understand people are skeptical of things that seem too good to be true. And again, people are busy. They forget, okay? But I will say this much. The drivers that have joined my fleet over the last year are very happy to have met me. Just remember, you are presenting them with a really unique, cool opportunity for doing what they're already doing, and you've made the financial investment. You're sharing the upside with them. And that brings me to my final point. Like, let's say you're putting in a pre-order today, and you're not going to get your dash cam until I believe it's April or May at this point. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, I missed the boat. No, we are still so early in this. And the way the rewards work with this project is as there's more global progress, you can actually get better rewards over time. And even if you have to wait until May, you should have started recruiting yesterday. Because let's break down the numbers. I would say that only 1 out of every 5 Ubers that I get into actually meet my ideal driver profile. And of that 1 driver out of 5, I might close 1 out of 3. Well, more recently, actually, I'd say I've been closing like 1 out of every 2. Obviously, because my sales process has gotten that much better over the last month. Definitely has nothing to do with any other factors. But even at a 50% close rate, that's still only 1 out of every 10 drivers you'd add to your fleet. So let's say that your goal is to get to 5 drivers. You would have to take 50 Uber rides to get to those 5 drivers. So all of a sudden, May doesn't seem so far away. Now say if you get a driver that's excited about joining your fleet, don't wait 5 months and be like, oh, hey, by the way, it's a dashcam guy from 5 months ago. And be like, wait, who? But also don't check in like every day, like, hey, Brian, it's your morning check-in from your dashcam guy. Like, don't be creepy about it. But every couple of weeks, make sure to have a touch point. It could be, hey, we just reached 12% of the world's roads. The second I get my shipping information, I'll give you a shout and we can schedule a time to meet up. Or I just checked in with the Hivemapper team and we're still on schedule for X delivery. The second I get my order, I'll meet up with you and get you set up. And you'll be surprised. You'll start getting referrals before you even get your dash cam. So start the work today. My next video is going to be one that you definitely don't want to miss. I'm going to be talking about how I set up fleet management, add drivers to the fleet, what work I do on the front end before I even meet up with the driver to make the meeting with them more efficient, best practices for getting them set up, whether you're shipping them the camera or meeting with them directly, and then ultimately in the back end, how I manage my reward distribution every week and implement my referral program into that distribution, and how you can land a unicorn through your referral system. And when I talk about unicorns, I'm talking about Amazon Flex, Uber Eats, DoorDash drivers, because you can put a front and a side camera with those drivers since they have no passengers. You should always do your own research, but if you so choose to get a dash cam, I do have a 10% discount code linked below. So please do subscribe, like, comment below, As always, I appreciate your viewership. This is Bradley Meyer with the DePIN Connection signing off.